Welcome to Cafecito y Calidad. I'm your host, Elizabeth Sanchez, licensed marriage and family therapist and certified coffee enthusiast. Whether we're catching up with friends, studying for a big exam, or grounding with a little caffeinated cozy goodness, coffee brings us together, it powers us up, and it gives us a reason to sit down and connect. Each week, I'll be sitting down with an inspiring entrepreneur to discuss their journey towards building successful businesses and the mental wellness tools they use to alleviate burnout. But first, let's take a sip of something warm and comforting, shall we? Are you looking for a coffee shop that gives back to the community? Check out ShrinkRay Coffee in Claremont. This nonprofit organization puts all of its profits into Claremont and the surrounding communities. Plus, they offer some of the most delicious drinks around, including the cinnamon mocha made with oat milk, chocolate drizzle, and cinnamon syrup. So come on down to ShrinkRay Coffee and let's talk about mental health while supporting a great cause. Hello and welcome to Cafecito y Calidad, where we have quality conversations over coffee. I'm your host, Elizabeth Sanchez, licensed marriage and family therapist. On this season of Cafecito y Calidad, we'll be talking about all things entrepreneur. On today's episode, we'll be talking about therapy, advocacy, and entrepreneurship. Our special guest today is a dear friend of mine, colleague, an entrepreneur, and of course, a former CrossFitter. That's actually how we met. So let's give a warm welcome to Ray Chung, LMFT from the Ray Shrink Center.
Thank you.
Welcome to the podcast, Ray.
I appreciate it.
It's been so many years that we've known each other, but before we get into all the nitty gritty of our episode, I have a really important question to ask you.
Yes, go ahead.
I actually asked you on our Instagram Live, but I'm going to ask you again. How do you take your coffee? And I say coffee because I know you don't do tea.
For the most part, I did take it black, but every now and then I do add milk.
Okay.
Yep.
I know you mentioned cold brew during our Instagram Live for those
Yep.
of you who didn't
Oh,
watch
that's
it.
right. Yes, I love cold brew. It's probably the strongest form that I drink my coffee in. So cold brew is probably the best with milk.
Yeah, absolutely. I love cold brew. I take it black.
Mm.
So I know we have that in common.
Yep.
So, Ray, can you share, I know you shared it a little bit on our Instagram Live, but share a little bit about your story around coffee because it's actually really, really unique. I know your dad. So yeah.
So, I was not a coffee drinker until during COVID. My wife and I had a kid during COVID, at pretty much at the height of the pandemic, and he, at around 6, 7 months, we were gifted a while ago about almost 6 to 7 pounds of just coffee beans. So we had to get rid of it. And so what I ended up doing, we didn't have a coffee grinder at the time. So I Googled it, found out, hey, you can use your blender as as a,
So no fancy
no,
coffee grinder.
nothing like that. So I ended up using a blender to grind it, and so from there we weren't really sure what to do. So because I wasn't really a coffee drinker, my wife doesn't drink coffee, so we ended up just blending it, throwing some away, and then I figured I guess we should start drinking it. And then while that happened, my kid, he loved seeing the coffee grounds being blended, so we ended up doing that every day. And as we were getting into it, I pretty much, in a sense, forced myself to start drinking coffee more, learned to enjoy the process of drinking it, went from, uh, or I guess, regular pouring it into super coarse coffee grounds, into getting a budget blender, to getting a cold brew maker from my sister-in-law. And it just, that coffee empire sort of grew that way.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Once again, coffee brings us together.
Yep.
Brought you and your son together.
Yep. For sure.
Wonderful.
For sure.
So Ray, today we're going to be talking about all things entrepreneur. I know this is your specialty. One of the things that we talked about during your Instagram Live was burnout.
Yep.
And that you do help other therapists and practitioners work through that.
Yep.
So I'd really love to hear your story around what got you into entrepreneurship, especially in the mental health field.
Yeah. So, for me, how it all started, it started with two modes of entrepreneurship. First one was as I was finishing my grad program for my LMFT. It was clear people went one of two routes. They either went and joined some agency, or they started their practice. So I really didn't know what to do. So it was sort of peer pressure by my former boss. She was like, "You need to start your practice." Not knowing what to do, wasn't given any steps. It was just, "You need to do this and you'll figure it out," type of thing. So as soon as I got licensed, I did start my practice, but really had nothing. And then so because of that, I felt like, oh, I need to make money. So I need to join something that'll actually give me experience and help me. So what I ended up doing, I joined a county agency. And that agency worked primarily with adolescents that were going in and out of jail into residential settings and back to jail and pretty much that cycle. So I thought, I am helping these kids. I am doing everything right by what I'm supposed to do. I'm getting my earning my stripes, so to speak. And as I was in there, I was suffering pretty badly for a couple of reasons. I loved what I was doing. I loved how I was helping the kids. However, I struggle so much with the productivity. I struggle so much with meeting so many demands of what the county needed me to do. So fast forward, I ended up getting burned out. I ended up getting let go. And as you know, as hard as it is to still talk about, it was definitely something where I learned so much from that. And then all at the same time, saw a bunch of my colleagues go through the same thing. Um, so all types of burnout, or even folks that were there before me that had burnout. And crazily enough, as I was venturing into figuring this stuff out, how so many people in county mental health have been burned out, just don't say anything because they have to get the benefits from their job or maintain their income. Um, and that's how they would survive. So burnout was so common that it was basically normalized, and it is to this day still normalized. So how that kind of led to step two of my entrepreneurship is that a couple things. As I got let go slash fired, I had to go full practice or find another job, right? So while I was on leave, because I was sort of, it was a weird combination of being let go nicely, but also technically fired. So in those 4 months after I got let go, I went full in to my private practice, everything from referral sources, marketing, building my brand even more. And by about the fifth month, technically the 6th month of January 2021, I had a full practice. And
So right, can we go back for just
yeah,
a second? Because it seems like you were at a crossroads. Do I go back to maybe community mental health? Do I
right,
go in the route of opening my practice full time?
right.
When you were at that crossroads, what helped you make that decision that it was time to go full time private practice?
Simply, I didn't want to keep suffering. It was, yeah, it was bad. That suffering pretty much affected every part of my life. Um, so that burnout slash suffering affected, I mean, we'll start with the home world, my home island. It affected my marriage, 100%. It affected my relationship with my wife. I brought so much work home. I would I mean, countless nights she would tell you where we would. She was really great in the beginning about not fighting with me. She's like, "Well, that's his job, so what can I say?" So I would, while we're watching a show or a movie, I would take out my computer or my accounting computer from the Faraday bag and uh, start typing notes. And then as those notes either got rejected or or submitted, it would be hours of still catching up. And I would do this countless days. And then that obviously affected my home life. And then that bled into my social life where I stopped going to workouts. I stopped going to,
I actually remember that.
yeah,
I didn't see you for some time.
yeah. I stopped going to workouts. I stopped hanging out with people. I distinctly remember even canceling to hang out with friends on Friday nights and Saturday nights to meet productivity. So I would stay. There was a night I'll never forget, where it was a residential setting, so they pretty much had 24/7 staff. So I would stay there with the students, and the students would hang out in my office while I'm typing out notes, and it was crazy.
Wow.
It was insane. And kids would be like, "Ray, why don't you go home and sleep?" I go, "Bro, this is for you." So I'm typing notes for you. And
Compassion fatigue.
yes, so that's exactly what it led to: compassion fatigue, more burnout, and yeah, it affected pretty much all areas of my life. So that decision was I can't go back to that. Even though, crazily enough, if you went on any job engine, search job engine, Indeed, Monster, you name it, those were all the jobs that every, I guess, LMFT, LCSW, LPCC could get. And the group practices weren't branding as much or growing as much. So at that time, county jobs were the jobs. And I can't speak too much of it now, but um, back then, it definitely was. So and it was funny when you went to the same job site, I saw the same job position that I got let go from put up every month. So it showed either people were quitting every month or they were getting let go every month. And that recidivism of people staying was not there. So it was pretty bad. Yeah.
So it sounds like it was, I don't want to, like, I really don't want to suffer anymore. And you really had to do an inventory of where you were at.
Yeah. 100%. So that that was a massive decision. And that was also, there was several points in my life like that, but that was one of the points of, should I even continue therapy, or this type of therapy? Because um, there's no way that this is the rite of passage, air quotes, because if this is it, then the ironic part that I'm sure everyone will get by now is that if therapists get burned out, if therapists' mental health is shot, how are they going to take care of uh, their own clients?
You know, Ray, as I was driving here to our for our podcast episode, I was thinking to myself, really reflecting on our episode, and I was like, community mental health is one of the hardest, right, type of work that we can do as clinicians.
Yeah.
And the fact that we're burning out so much, because I worked community mental health, I also did inpatient. So I know what you're talking about, the burnout, the suffering. And we it's just so unfortunate how we're not taking care of our therapists.
Yeah. 100%.
Yes. So I was just reflecting on that on our way here. Like, we really do, especially in that area of work. But any tips, just because I'm sure a lot of therapists are going to be watching this episode, but when you were at that crossroads and you're like, I don't want to suffer anymore, I'm going to go into private practice, any tips that you would give a therapist, maybe in that situation, when they're trying to figure out, what do I do?
Yeah. Uh, okay. So along with the burnout tips that I even gave at the
Yes.
IG live, it really comes down to it, just a few core things. Uh,
Mhm.
you have to really figure out, is this what I want to do? Is this what I want to continue doing? Again, as obvious as that question is, and then second, third, and the couple other things is, you have to have priorities for your work-life balance. Um, and then the next couple of things would include, you really need to be okay with not being the best therapist, not being, or like I was, savior complex mode, where I felt like I have to help these kids. I have to help them a certain way. If I don't meet these goals or these treatment goals, then I'm a bad therapist, you know? And so my expectations were so high for certain things that I would be disappointed, and I would be like working so hard on a certain treatment plan. Come to find out, the kid runs away the next day, you know? So, and then the kid comes back. So the same cycle happens. And for anyone that works in county or county mental health knows this, that anytime you do paperwork, client that client that runs away comes back or comes back to inpatient or anything like that, you're redoing X amount of paperwork. You have to redo either assessments, you have to either redo um, certain things just to prove that they're still identifiable, able to come in, stay in the system again. Um, and yeah, you just have to keep doing that. So it's like double, if not triple, the paperwork every time. And that's not healthy. And then the last one is you you have to have in that work life balance, you have to have a space where you can disconnect from, especially if you're doing county mental work. Um, you have to separate that. If you don't, it will catch up to you. People have either collateral trauma, vicarious trauma. You take that stuff home. And I will say this, not to be mean. I don't care how great of a therapist you are. If you have an empathy tank, that empathy tank eventually blends. It'll blend with your clients. It'll eventually blend with whoever you're talking with. Where that's why we call it transference or countertransference, where you absorb that home. Um, so you take that out to your friends. You take that out to your family. Uh, that transfers to everyone. So at the end of the day, you're ending up screwing yourself over. Um, yeah.
No, thank you for those tips because I feel like right now, and I'm just noticing it in the field of mental health, a lot of therapists are making that transition into private practice because of that level of burnout. And I can definitely agree. When I was working inpatient and I was also at a group practice, so I was juggling sometimes 2 to 3 jobs at a time. And I noticed those when I left a job, I would go on Indeed or, a job posting site, and I did notice it was a revolving door. And
Yep.
that's kind of what led me to. And I also knew in the future, I was like, I want to also have my own family, start my family, and be able to have the flexibility to spend time with my son or my family and my husband. And so that also helped me because that work life balance, being able to have that, because I wasn't having it when I was balancing all these different jobs. So, moving forward, you decided I'm going to become my own boss.
Yeah. Yep. So that's pretty much, yeah. So right after I got let go, it was really finding that decision. Okay. I took, I think, about 2 weeks just not thinking or doing of anything. It was actually great to hang out with my wife. Um, and we, yeah, I didn't do anything in regards to like what to do just because I was, I guess you would say, burned out, right? So I was so fine with not thinking of doing anything. And then um, at some point, again, I don't remember the exact date or time, but it eventually turned into okay, if I start applying for jobs, do I want to suffer or do I want to do something that maybe I can grow? And just to be clear, at that point, I had no idea what I was doing in regarding like marketing, growing, or anything like
They
that.
don't teach us this in grad school.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
don't.
and there's so many now, thankfully, because of social media. There's plenty of therapists
Yes.
and folks out there talking about that. Like, yeah, I guess me
Right.
too. So that talk about that. What I have a little seminar thing I run every 3 to 6 months, 3 to 6 months, where I say I graduated. Now what? That's literally the name of the seminar. Where just for free for grad students that just graduated. Um, like, what do I do after I graduate? Do I want to get my registered number? Do I want to pursue licensure? What are my options? What are the things out there? I go over the basics, and because yeah, grad school doesn't teach that. And just recently, I did hear a few universities that are trying to bring on people to talk about those things, which is great. But yeah, for sure in my program, I think in your program too, I definitely didn't have that.
Definitely not.
Most of the professors there would just say, "You'll figure it out." I have my own private practice. I'll figure it out.
I think the most that I had was it was during my fieldwork class. A therapist that was already out in the field, they were an alumni, came and talked for maybe 30 minutes,
Mm.
talked about her private practice experience, but that was it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. For me, most of them, most of the professors there had their own practice, except they were also already full-time faculty either at the university or they were um, they were contracted with something else throughout the county. So they were comfortably talking about private practice, not worrying that they needed to grow their practice. Most of them were not devoted to having a full time private practice, or simply put, most of them were okay with, uh, I have like 10 clients and that's it. And because and I know I can't speak for everyone, but like for folks that are single provider homes, for folks that really want to have that business side and grow their practice to X amount size, or super business hat, I want to grow it into an institution, right? Famous people that most therapists know, the Gottmans, they started just because their research was insane, right? I think they have now logged over 10,000 couples to pretty much predict if your marriage will survive, right? So,
Wow.
so
Yes.
their study and research went into their practice, and their practice branded itself into now they have their own houses to record couples, to do everything, to now a full on what they call an institution, multi-million dollar, company. Um, but again, most private practitioners don't think like that. They think mostly like, okay, I'm going to see a handful of clients, but I'm also going to do 4 other jobs just to maintain this. Um, Now, thankfully, again, I think social media and other people in the business world are promoting this, so it's happening more. But private practitioners are definitely getting into this understanding and space. Yeah, my practice can bring in decent money. I can make like decent stuff going on, and yeah, so
And so you decided to, open up your private practice, Ray. Along the road, did you notice being a BIPOC therapist? Did you encounter any specific challenges or um, just roadblocks and how did you work through those?
yeah. Um, it it came in waves. Being a BIPOC therapist, so it came mostly from what my clients said to me. So a couple of them that I can think off the top of my head, uh, clients would say, so from the sad end, I'll say this: clients would come in saying, "Wow, you're my fifth therapist," and then I'd be like, "What? Okay, let's hope
Wow.
I don't mess this one up." And you're my fifth therapist, and you finally understand my cultural side, right? And now, here's the thing: most therapists, and if you even look 20, even 30 years back, they still had what they had, those like CEUs of cultural competency courses, right? Or even in grad school, they still had those ethnics studies, right? Or something related to that. And so, oops. So that being said, sorry. So that being said, um, when my clients would come in, that's what they would end up. A lot of them would end up saying that again in waves where, "Wow, you're my first therapist that actually understood my collectivistic side. You're my first therapist that can actually understand what it means to have Asian guilt." So
Wow.
now, and again, that being said, like to be very frankly honest, there was no way for me to know that because I mean, in California per capita, we have a ton of therapists, up and down SoCal to NorCal. So I just figured, I really thought, how bad could these therapists be? These other therapists be? How incompetent could they be? And I know that sounds mean. Don't get me wrong.
No, you're being honest.
We go into this field to help. I would hope to help people. So, um, and so there was that. On the flip side of things, being a BIPOC therapist, for me, and I can't say 100%, but because my practice was mostly in Riverside, um, that the area I was in mostly were a combination of Caucasians and Hispanic people. So in that in that like demographic, um, I will say this: the Latinx community was super comfortable coming to me, but then the Caucasian folks not as much. But then if they came to me, it was because I could work with kids, right? And that I was a male, right? So from the BIPOC world, like there are things where I didn't receive as much, I guess what you would say, frustration or even racial struggles from a therapist point. But from a client perspective, I got quite a few of that, where clients would say, again, continuous things that were just really hurtful to hear, like, man, your previous therapist said what to you? And that's why you didn't feel accepted. And again, I know it's very subtle things that therapists say that can throw off your client, right? Um, and that's pretty much how I've been. Again, it comes in waves. It doesn't happen all the time, but that's pretty much how I would handle the mostly the BIPOC situations.
And how are you able to, and how are maybe are you continuing to work through that? Because I'm sure you're still hearing some of those comments from your clients.
Yeah, 100%. So right now, for me, how my practice is slowly shifting, or it could be rapidly shifting. Um, I'm I'm putting myself where, and I think we'll go into this more later today, where I am part of hopefully what we can count uh, bridging mental health with church and mental health. So, and I'm super involved in church, and so because of that, I am connecting with pastors. I'm connecting with other spiritual leaders to pretty much get this conversation going, especially in the Korean American churches, and that's oddly enough opening up a lot of doors there, where I'm getting a lot of questions, and it's yeah. So that's one way how I'm trying to tackle that. Hopefully, this encourages others to do the same, um, because right now I don't know the statistics, but it's still very vast. Where percentages of um, Latinx therapists, Asian therapists, even African American therapists are super low compared to the Caucasian ratio percentage out there. And again, that's understandable because of history, demographic, and also just the people that went into therapy. So I'm not trying to disregard that. However, it is very clear that now that mental health is thankfully through other platforms are blowing up, more people are able to bring up their stuff. And hopefully they're able to address that in the therapeutic setting. So, yeah.
No, I think that's really powerful because I have you as a referral source, and the amount of male therapists, because in our field we call you a unicorn.
Thank
You
you.
really are. You're an Asian male therapist and who works with children.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you're like, so whenever I can refer someone to you, I definitely do. So, I really appreciate you sharing some of the ways that you've been able to work through that, and the fact that your clients can, you see them. And I think that's really powerful because, with my experience, I get that a lot. So a lot of my clients, being Latina, that you're the first person that sees me. You're the first person that really resonates with my story. You understand, um, some of the things that I'm going through, and they're able to build that relationship and continue therapy.
Yeah.
So, is that something that you're able to also see in the work that you're doing?
Yeah, for sure. It's I, for me when I try to promote that, um, for example, and again, I might be jumping ahead, but for example, for me, what shifted a lot since the end of 2022, or yeah, fall to now, um, one thing that's been a big shift for me is, and this was sort of by accident. I did not brand this. I did not try to market this. But in the Asian American community, having high schoolers coming out um, has been uh, a very sensitive topic. And I can't speak for all categories in the Asian world, but I know for sure in the Korean American, also just Korean culture in general, the stigma around mental health is still pretty rough. So just even processing the fact that to process your own stress was very taboo, right? So now getting to the next levels up in regards to talking about, hey, mom, I am sexually attracted to the same gender, um, has led to a lot of talking points, not just with kids, of course, but parents as well. Um, a lot of psychoeducation there. From the Korean community, I can't speak for all, but from the Korean community, a lot of the first generation immigrants, parents and grandparents have this understanding that counselors are equivalent to doctors, medical doctors. So when they send their kids to fix them, uh, we're supposed to fix them to being no longer gay, to fix them to being no longer a certain orientation. Um, obviously, we can't do that. So,
You know,
um,
I hear that a lot though in the Latinx community too. My clients are like, I'll be doing a telehealth session. They'll be in, somebody comes into their room or something. Estoy en una cita with mi doctora, or I'm in an appointment with my doctor. So that's something that we definitely share. There's still that stigma around.
yeah,
Yeah.
100%. So, and a lot of my Korean American high schoolers, what they ended up just telling their moms or dads, it's like, yeah, I'm meeting my doctor, to hush them because their parents are expecting them to see Dr. Ray to be fixed, right? Or because they know I'm a Christian therapist, they're gonna say, "Go to Ray, so he's gonna slap the Bible with you and fix you straight," type of thing. And it's yeah, it's still heavily out there. So and so for me, that again, like I said, it sort of became a I don't want to say accident, but I happened to get a few high schoolers that were experiencing that, going through that, and because of that, my name sort of went out. Hey, there's this Korean American therapist that is cool to talk about this stuff, right? I don't know if that's the slang that my high schoolers use, but something similar to that. So and so that became very, in a sense, comfortable. So as I go to churches, as I go to other places, um, my high schoolers would either talk about me or say, "Yeah, hey, if you're even in questioning, right? Raise someone you can talk to. He won't judge you. He won't make you feel a certain way." Um, and being able to, hopefully, for me at least, be able to continue to provide that space. Hopefully, that will resonate with others as well.
And right, can you speak a little bit to you're pretty much bridging the gap between church,
Mm,
the Asian community,
mm,
and the LGBTQI plus community as well.
mm.
How's that been for you?
Uh, Honestly, I don't think I've necessarily made any crazy strong headway. It's just more so, um, again, for me, when these kids come to me, it's more so recognizing, hey, these kids need a voice. And number two, this is an obvious one, is being able to talk with your either, and I know this is stereotypical, but you're with your tiger parent, um, and how to communicate with them. And that's essentially what I'm doing without really calling it that. Because many times my high schoolers would come to me saying something, oh, my parents just don't understand. And again, most high schoolers say that. I probably said that too. I don't know what's wrong with my mom or dad. So what I usually do is give them that space to first vent, and then from there process. And number three, give them little. It's like really gentle tools to help them bring up something to their parents, because most of the time the parents, again, from a cultural piece, parents come in with this understanding that Dr. Ray is going to fix everything, right? Koreans, I can't speak for all Koreans, but they do have a very strong medical model mindset. America, I mean, still mostly does have a medical model mindset anyway. So, giving them a just a recovery model mindset is hard to do, safe to say. So, bridging that and even connecting all that, it's more so giving them understanding. I think modern terms people would call, or therapists or psychologists would call that awareness. I'm not so sure that certain church community people are ready to be aware, um, because it's very it's so embedded that uh, certain things are not acceptable, right? And it's so embedded in culture that things are just not okay and things have to be a certain way. It's very rigid, it's very set. So, yeah, so I can't say I've made much headway in that other than I've just been able to open up a space for that. And then when other parents hear that, it's like, oh, there's this guy that'll talk to my kid, my crazy kid. Okay, we'll send him to Ray. And then,
But that's still a step though, right? Right?
yeah, 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 yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. These children see, they find safety in you. You're bridging the gap in all these areas. And then that's not even throwing you're an entrepreneur.
Mm.
So like entrepreneurship, the Asian community church, and adolescent, all these different things that it seems like becoming an entrepreneur has given you maybe more freedom to be able to access underserved populations.
Yeah. Uh, it's actually opened the door for finding more underserved populations. Like I said, to be honest, I went into therapy. Uh, I went into therapy with both my parents knowing they did not approve of my career choice. So,
That makes two of us.
so just to be,
Wow.
yeah, so it was like the short version of my undergrad career. I was supposed to go pre-med. I was supposed to be, I wanted to be a pediatrician. I loved working with kids ever since I was younger, so I knew kids was going to be my thing. It's just which direction. I had in my head, I was talking with my roommate Gordon a lot about this back then. Like, I could be anywhere from a children's pastor to a pediatrician to even child counselor, play therapist, whatever. I had this huge list, but everything was related to kids. So, um, as I was going through pre med in Texas, I got rocked in my undergrad, as in academic probation for like 3 months. Rocked.
No way.
So,
So you decided to be a therapist in undergrad?
no,
Oh
no, no,
no.
no.
Okay.
So how that planned out, I got rocked in pre-med, and then the last straw of my pre-med world was I got into OChem. For most of you that know, it's organic chemistry. I walked into first day of class. I literally sat down, and because I of course walked in late, I had to sit in the front row. I walked in late. I saw the front class syllabus day, and I walked out. Yeah, that was my last science class. So, so,
I love
so,
that.
so I walked in, walked out, and then it's like, nope, that's not happening. With obviously other choice, colorful language, and so had to
Wow.
at that point I had to completely change my career, my degree path, with a terrible, destroyed cumulative GPA, figuring out what to do. So as I finally like thought, "Oh, okay, fine, maybe going into psych would be an interesting path." And as I was going in that direction, um, my GPA slowly got better. But again, I don't know how it was for other folks back then, but choosing a psych degree, everyone gave you crap for you're not going to get a job with that. What kind of psych degree is meaningless. So I was like, oh, but I need something. So I kept taking psych classes. My GPA was slowly getting better, and then by senior year, I was loving it, but my GPA was still terrible. And then by senior year, I had to take an extra semester because I tanked so many classes. Um, I was in like 2 play therapy research classes. Again, it was just to boost my GPA. I didn't care about the kids at the time. That sounds so mean, but it was really just to boost my GPA. And in Texas at the time, they had a different rule on becoming a registered play therapist, and they allowed undergrad students to be a part of the play therapy program, at least the program I was a part of. So I was doing the transcribing, research gathering, and then also getting to play and apply interventions with these super impoverished kids. Um, so it ended up being really fun. I ended up loving it. And I ended up getting attached to a lot of these kids. Like, wow, this is really cool. Plus, I got A's. Holy crap, I would get A's. So,
Best of both
oh,
worlds.
I, yeah.
Right.
So that was awesome. And then from there, it's where I thought, okay, I think I could do this therapy thing. So at that moment, I actually applied and got accepted into a satellite Texas state program for LPC. Mind you, I didn't know what an LPC was. All I knew is LPC in that part of Texas was more recognized than MFT in other parts of Texas. So I didn't know what MFT was. I didn't know any of those titles. Long story short, I was about to start the following term right after I graduated at my undergrad. But because one of my family members got sick, I came back to California and had to sort of restart. So from that decision point, that's where I decided I was stuck between should I go into pastoral counseling, becoming a pastor, or becoming a therapist. Um, and then so I mean I think I can say their name. So I got a random I think it was email because once you start looking up college apps and grad school apps, you get a ton of ads, right? So I got this ad from Cal Baptist U in Riverside, and it seemed like a Snap app because the moment I filled it out, I got a response saying, "Why don't you come in for an interview?" Like, there's no way. So I got I got accepted, and then because the reason I thought that was impossible because okay, my GPA was terrible. I figured I would have to take at least another year or two to catch up. Fast forward, I got accepted, and they were the dean at the time. She was gracious enough to knock off a few classes because I did well the last 2 semesters at my undergrad. So that just sort of fast forwarded the process for me going into therapy. Because even while I was in grad school, I wasn't sure that I was going to become a counselor. I really thought, this is maybe I'll just get the master's and then find a job with the master's because you need a job. So yeah, that's that's how I ended up going into the therapy world.
Wow. So it just ev- the universe, God,
Yes,
led you to this career choice.
yes, 100%.
That's wonderful. And you mentioned your parents. So your parents were expecting a doctor.
Okay, so
I just can really relate to this because
yeah, they
my,
were
yeah.
expecting, in their silence, they were expecting not counselor for sure. Mostly because they would tell me again. This is so my mom and dad. They were both aware of giving pressure to their kids of fulfilling a certain projection of a dream, right? So, becoming a lawyer, doctor, the top caps of certain job positions out there. So, um, but they didn't tell me, and then how I would find out is subtle comments from my dad of like, so what are you going to actually do in therapy? Who are you going to actually help? Or those little standish like walking by comments of you're going to work at a crazy hospital, right? So I'm like, oh, well, I guess that's what they think I'm going to do. So, um, and yeah, and they again had no idea, mostly because again, from the Korean cultural world, going into counseling in Korea at least meant you were working with severe mental health, or what we would view here in America as severe mental health. And basically in insane asylums, or you are working in super severe lockdown facility, inpatient facilities type of thing. So that was what their view mostly was. And uh, but I know my mom was a little more lenient towards that, like me going into counseling, just because she knew that I really enjoyed working with kids. Um, and yeah,
Wonderful. Yeah. My parents thought dentist or doctor of
nice.
some sort. So I can definitely relate to that.
Yes.
So it's it's really great. I can just the different challenges that you've been through and your resiliency, Ray. I can see that you've really pushed forward and
Thank you.
yeah. So I want to just, highlight on that and share that. So one of the other things, if we moving forward, we can talk about is you've also worked with the Native American community, and I
Yeah.
think when you and I would consult, you brought that up, and I always thought that was so interesting. What you've learned from that experience. Can you share a little bit with us about what that was like?
Yeah. So that I have to give all credit to my boss who when I was a registered intern. Um, so it's a crazy story, and to this day, it has changed my mind of how when so many therapists say that, uh, well, we've oversaturated therapy. This is a prime example of there's no way. So how I got into the Native American world is simply, um, my boss at the time. She was contracted, so her group was contracted with, um, what they would call TANF. TANF is basically the America's equivalency to welfare program. But TANF was for the Native American world, where they were able to get basically equivalent to like WIC, food stamps, free services, resources, housing vouchers, things like that. And but in order for her to maintain that contract, we had to provide, because her group was a nonprofit, so we had to provide X amount of parenting classes, X amount of resources for them. So in order to keep the funding going, so uh, so she one day came out of the blue, said, "Ray, um, so and so is sick. I need you to teach these parenting classes." I had not a single clue of how to teach parents. And so, so now, to be fair, and this is part of something I'll share way later on too. To be fair, I did tell her that I wanted all the work and contracts and busy work that no one wanted to do, right? So she took that full heart, and so she one day came up to me saying, "Hey Ray, I need you to teach a parenting class. So I need you to make a 12-week curriculum and start teaching." Oh, great. Who am I teaching? Native Americans. What? I don't know a single thing about them. And this is everything from a cultural perspective, like demographic perspective, just even a single thing. So I was going in super blind. So how it first started was every week, once a week, they had a um, a family cultural night. So she said, "Why don't you warm up by start introducing yourself to that family night?" Now that family night was super unstructured in the beginning. It was really kids there, and the main tribal staff. He would bring pizza, like uh, Costco pizza size boxes, for about 6 to 7 families. It was really small at first. And so I would join in, and I would just say hi, play with the kids, introduce myself, and then eventually I learned a lot about them. Some of them lived on reservation land, some of them lived right across from it, some of them lived in the city, and that's how I learned so much about it. And then as that happened, and this is the beauty of branding and growing. Um, I How I went into it was I really dove into working well with the kids. So how that contract worked was I was providing parenting classes, but I would also work with the kids that the parents needed to. I mean, they were struggling with. So my specialty at the time was really coming from a gung ho CBT. I'm going to fix every kid in the world type of mentality. Terrible mentality to have. But I did at the time. So it was super helpful for parents that needed quick answers, solution focused only, need to be in sessions for 3 to 4 sessions and be done. Right. So I was able to do that. And as that was happening, more families came. So so at one point we had upwards of like 50 people, family members, coming to these family nights. It just kept growing. So it was doing really well. And then the main guy, he is, and I'm very honored to know him. He's actually part of Tribal Council, the North America Tribal Council guy. Had no idea how big up he was, but so he came up to me and my boss like, "Hey, we want you to create another program down in another land." So quick legal stuff. In California, it is not legal to own a casino. The only reason why you can own a casino is if you're on native sovereign land. For people that don't know, so I learned that literally then and there. And he had me go down south near Temecula, people can put the dots together what casino that might be. Um, and he sent me down there uh, with my other coworker to start a brand new program. And it's crazy. And I can say this now. He said, he even offered saying, if you can create a program for us, if you do this for us, we will sign off your hours and we'll make you licensed on a sovereign land.
I remember you
Yeah.
told me that.
So it was like, what?
For all
So
the MFTs out there
yeah. So
who want to
he
get their hours signed
so
off.
he was saying, and I had no idea, but he basically said on on sovereign land, we can deem anything possible. So, oh, snap. Okay. So he offered that him and his coworkers like, oh yeah, and they had social workers that they hired from like USC, all over like Long
Wow.
Beach, and top-notch social workers to run their TANF program down there. Now, in the Temecula area of that, those folks, and I'm just being very honest here, they're like, when you talk about wealthy, they're like stupid wealthy, right? And what I mean by that is when I was given access to be on sovereign land, I'm working with families that live in like, I don't know if you've ever seen an elevator in a mansion, that type of house, right?
Wow.
And so when I would go,
A new world.
oh, it was crazy.
Wow.
And sovereign land, they can do whatever they want. Obviously their own rules on their land, but they had everything from their own fire department, their own version of police. I think they call it DPS. Um, and basically, as I was working on there, they pretty much gave me access to everything they had access to, other than obviously certain areas of the land where because I'm not native, I'm not allowed to be on there because it's sacred. But other than that, I had access to so much stuff. It was crazy. And so as I was providing that with my colleague, we were able to successfully grow a full parenting program. And also, pretty much, I got to work with the kids, and then he worked with the couples. I worked sometimes with families, and then we eventually grew that, and it turned out pretty well. And then eventually, because I was an intern still at that time, uh, it got shuffled out with the next intern therapist and stuff. So it is mind blowing what people don't know what happens on sovereign land. Um, and it's still mind blowing to, and I got to see um, what really goes down in that, and how just to the not so fun side to talk about, um, that in native land, gambling addiction, substance abuse addiction, um, all types of generational addiction is so common. And it's super saturated in that, where and there's that. And then another thing to that, this is a good and bad thing, because I can speak to this in a good or bad way. Native American mindset, and again, I can't speak for all, but Native American mindset is, it's collectivism, but incredibly enmeshed. So when you go to, let's say, a casino, 9 times out of 10, they're all related. They are cousins to cousins or someone's sibling in law. And they're so well connected that it's kind of like in the school district, how you get hired is who you know. Casino world is just like that. In order for you to get hired, especially from a native connect, that's how you would grow. And so when I was working with families, HIPAA was, there's no such thing as HIPAA. Everyone knew, you see my cousin, you see my brother. The kids would come up to me, you're not supposed to know that. And they would come up to me like, yeah, didn't you see my dad? Like, so it's like, my dad's talking to you about his problems, right? Like, and all the kids, all the families, all the workers know, like, so if I were to check into one of the facilities on the land, they would go, hey, Mr. Ray, thanks for coming. Here's your list of people you'll be seeing. You're going to see my left side of the family today. Like, you're not supposed to know this. And so informed consent, all that stuff, does not matter. What we learned in that process of legal law and ethics and things, they do not follow that at all. It's so enmeshed. That's the unhealthy part. Where boundaries, there's no such thing. Everyone knows everything. Everything spills their guts about everything. So when they process stuff, when they want to address something, that's the other side to it, where they will speak very kindly to everyone. And again, there's two sides to that coin, but it is, yeah, that world working in the Native American with the Native Americans is very, it's a whole different set of cultural competency.
So Ray, hearing your experience with the Native American community, going back to entrepreneurship, how did that shape you now with the practice that you're running? Like, how has that shaped your experience as an entrepreneur?
Yeah. So one thing for sure, and this is to encourage new, because I obviously do this when I encourage new people to start their own private practice. The number one thing I hear that everyone, not everyone, the number one thing that people say that they struggle with when they start their practices, how are they going to get their clients? How are they going to get their referrals? And what I say is number one, it is not saturated in what you're doing. Um, because if you obviously market and brand it correctly to regarding what specialty and niche you have, niche, then I, it's like you don't have to try that hard. And so, for example, when I worked in the Native American world, um, because I was able to make a kid laugh in session, that created 5 to 10 more referrals easily. That kid told 5, 10 other kids that he played with, yeah, I talked to this Asian guy that looks like me to do this. And so it 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 just grew. So as obvious as this sounds, um, that it, yeah, it just kind of grew from there. And then same thing with I guess you would say referrals now. I Yeah, that's how I would basically do that with marketing and telling therapists to be able to do that. The same thing, I think. So, yeah.
How do you plan to continue serving and inspiring others through your work in the future, Ray?
I want to continue to, especially this summer, to reach out to church pastors and spiritual leaders to be able to connect with them to uh, start beginning that bridging process, if not continue the bridging process. With a few churches that I've connected already, right now, summertime for a lot of churches, it's vacation Bible school season. So a lot of kids are in basically camps, right? Church camps. And so that's a great time for either therapists or even therapists myself to connect with leaders to see if there's any concerns that they see, and then if I can be of sort of like a consultant role to go into that. And because I mostly work with kids, and these days mostly with high schoolers, to be able to provide that opportunity. I have a few, or hopefully soon to be, what I can call as colleagues that I do know that they're also trying to get plugged into the college community to be able to provide, well, simply put, counseling for folks in the college community, especially in a church setting. Again, just because even now there's a lot, well, a good amount of taboo in regards to should I go to counseling or not. Um, and it's, yeah, so hopefully.
Wonderful, Ray. As we wrap up our episode today, are you able to share a little bit about how we can support your work? Like, what do you have, besides, trying to bridge the gap with the church community? What are you up to?
So recently, I've been slowly growing this. I've My main focus, of course, including my practice as well, is helping therapists that are planning to or have already left the county mental health world to start their own practice. So what I've been doing there is really the simple stuff to getting them just their business registered, to all the way to finding a brick and mortar office, to even ultimately getting their practice launched. And then if they're already well into it, getting their practice scaled. So that's pretty much what I've been doing. And summer is going to be a pretty intensive version of that, just because for whatever reason, a lot of therapists also quit county mental health during the summer. So I know that trend just from hearing from friends and other colleagues as well, and also group practices. If you go on job search engine websites right now, there's a ton of group practices that are just advertising like crazy. So you can tell through job searches that it's like, okay, so these are the companies that are hiring and that are hungry for therapists. So it's clear that when you follow that job trend, that therapists are also going to be hopping on that wagon. So that's my main thing right now, to help therapists get there. And it's, yeah, I actually really enjoy it. So hopefully that grows as well.
Yeah, I'm a fan of your social media account. On Instagram, you just post so many great videos that help therapists, open up their practice, how you're helping them avoid burnout. So, can you share with our audience how your social media account, maybe your website?
Yeah. I think my social media handle for Instagram is Raymond_Chung LMFT,
Okay.
and something like that. And I should
Come
know.
on,
I
Ray.
should know. And then, but on my website, that if it's I think the ShrinkRayCenter.com. That one, I don't have anything about helping therapists there. That's mostly for my adolescents and kids, and how I help families that are there. So right now, if I don't necessarily think I need support on this, but it's great for people to know, for therapists to know, I am officially transitioning to a corporation. Thank you.
Congratulations. I know you announced it
Yeah,
on Instagram the other day.
yeah. So
Wonderful.
yeah, I had a corporation for a while. I just never took advantage of it. So I'm doing that mostly just for tax purposes, and also eventually telling other therapists or showing other therapists it's possible and it's not too hard. Of course, with the guidance of a tax person or a tax lawyer. I'm blessed with two wonderful, great CPAs that help me, and so we've been grinding that out. So by July, hopefully by July, I should have most of my accounts switched over, and that should be starting. And then, or not really, just continuing the same stuff. And then I will probably be posting stuff about that too, regarding the steps to do that. And also, it's not as intimidating as it
Thank you for
seems.
saying that, because
Yeah,
I think a lot of therapists are so intimidated by that process. And
yeah, for sure.
so so people can check out your Instagram for updates
Yep,
on that process,
yep, yep.
and how you can support them. I think you're on Facebook as well.
I am. Should I think it's just my name, Raymond Chung. It might be the same, Raymond Chung LMFT. I
All
should really
right.
know this.
Come on, Ray, an
I
entrepreneur
I
that doesn't
should
know his
I
social
should
media.
really know that. Yeah. But yeah, I usually connect it both anyways.
Sure.
So it should be on there. And again, I will say this, like, for anyone that's going or
Mhm.
wanting to start their practice, that um, if I started it, and I'm really saying this because I went into it knowing nothing. If I can start it really at the height of the pandemic, like, trust me, anyone can.
Absolutely.
So it's more than possible.
You have two therapists of color who knew nothing, and we did it.
Yep.
So you
Yep.
definitely can too. Definitely check out Ray on. Are you on TikTok?
I am. I technically am. I just haven't used it.
What's your
I have
TikTok?
no idea. I
Ray,
I don't
so
even.
disappointed.
This. Yeah. I should. I don't even know what it is. I'm guessing it's my name.
I was gonna
I
say you're TikTok famous.
I if
Man,
I know I'm
no,
definitely not
I'm
TikTok
giving you a
famous.
hard, I'm giving you
I
a hard
wish,
time.
yeah, I wish I knew.
It's all right.
I need to get on that. So
But you're on Instagram, you're on Facebook, you have your website.
mhm.
Thank you so much for such a wonderful conversation, sharing about your journey of becoming a therapist and entrepreneur,
Mm,
how you're bridging the gap in so many different areas, Ray. Keep up the good work, and
thank you, thank you.
it's been an honor to share this space with you today.
Thanks for having me.
Cut.